Coming up to 4 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning and how are you doing? Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Spice FM and the show is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're broadcasting from Nairobi, 94.4. We're in Mombasa, 87.9. Call your friends in Kisumu and tell them to tune in. 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi. Live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. We're on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We're also on Twitter at Spice FM KE and YouTube, Spice FM KE. On the hot seat this morning, Edwin Sifuna-ODM Party Secretary General. Good morning. Happy New Year. It's good to see you. You know, until June,
yes,
we can keep telling each other Happy New Year.
No, I think every time you see someone for the first time in the year, you just tell them
Happy New Year.
Yeah, so Happy New Year to all of you. It's good to see you again. I'm happy to be here.
Karibu
sana.
Asante.
Of course, you are very busy right now. You as a party, you are involved in the BBI conversation.
Absolutely.
You are also right there trying to prepare and plan for party national elections. Which, as we understand, that you've pushed them, you've postponed them for a while, so that you can focus on just one thing. Right?
Absolutely.
Ensure that this one thing is delivered and delivered well.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the BBI conversation going around the country. Report came out. The last time you were here, you told us what that you liked what you'd seen in the report. It had not contained everything that you as a Secretary General and the party leadership had presented to the BBI task force.
Yes.
But you were going to engage.
Yes.
And then we've seen the political rallies, so to speak, happening. Major ones, we've seen one happening in Kisii, Kakamega, last weekend in Mombasa. This weekend, where are you going?
This weekend we're supposed to be in Kitui.
So you're going to Eastern?
For the Lower Eastern.
The Lower Eastern part.
Yeah.
And then you have an entire itinerary up to the end of February,
yes,
where you have all these conversations.
Yeah.
When you started these talks, there were, of course, those other voices that came up, and the voices were, all right, so we are seeing now the politicians gathering people together in a group and having rallies and political leaders talking to people, and then coming up with resolutions and saying this is the declaration, the Kisii declaration, Kakamega, the Mombasa one. We saw, for example, the governor of Meru saying, look, let's safeguard this baby and ensure that the baby is delivered in the right way and not taken over by political interest. Yesterday, we saw the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Kyle McCarter, actually using the word hijacking and saying there's fear that the political class could be hijacking the BBI talk. So let's just put that to you straight, because you are the main organizers of this BBI talk.
Yeah.
Is it the political class trying to hijack our baby?
It's absolutely ridiculous for people to suggest you can hijack a vehicle you are driving. You cannot hijack a plane you're steering yourself. I wonder to myself at which particular part or stage of this particular process were politicians not in charge. ODM has been in charge of this process from inception. We are the ones that have protected this baby that people are talking about. From King Herod, who had already issued an edict to kill all the babies because they heard that the baby was coming to take their kingdom. We are the vanguards of this particular process. We have protected it, we have steered it, and if it were not for people, especially the ODM party, we would not even be talking about a report, Latif. So I think it is disingenuous for people to claim that we are taking over a process. We are the owners of this process. We have been with it from the start. It was initiated by our party leader. We have walked the path with him even when there were doubters about what the process is about. You remember at some point we were being accused of having found a back route to parliament. Sifuna, who's talking to you today, is not in cabinet. I am still the SG of the opposition party.
You're not yet a roving...
No, I'm not.
Roving cabinet secretary.
I wish I was. I wish I was. I drove myself to your studios this morning. I have no security from the state. I mean, I'm not in government in any form or shape. They told us that the report that was going to be released was somehow an ODM written report, and they were talking before the report was done. We told them to be patient and read the report. Suddenly, when the report came out, they said, they were happy with the report. We are now in the process of validating a report, and validation essentially means you look at the report and see the things that are in the report, whether your views were captured, and you say they were captured or they were not captured. In the first meeting in Kisii, there were very interesting discussions. I was there, of course, as an observer, as a national leader. I want to hear what the people in the region were talking about. There was a member of parliament from Kuria West who stood up and said, as a people of Kuria, we have read this report. We told this gentleman that we are not very happy with the political representation within Migori, that we would prefer, as the people of Kuria, to have our own county. We don't see that
Contained in the report.
contained in the report. In Kakamega, there were views. They were saying, for instance, during the meeting at the prior meeting in Bungoma, the teacher stood up and said, "We told this committee that we would want a teacher." A representative of a teacher to be one of the commissioners in the TSC. We have not seen it in the report, and it was actually adopted as one of the recommendations. The young people said, we saw a recommendation, for instance, that young entrepreneurs will get a 7-year tax holiday. We would like that tax holiday extended to people in employment, because not all of us are entrepreneurs. Some of us are in the arts, some of us are in sports, some of us are in formal employment, and that if you extended this, so it is a process of validation.
Mr. Sifuna, these views that you speak of, were they being preferred during what seemed to me like a rally, or were they before? At what point did they take place?
I think the 3 meetings that we've had, all of them have taken the same format. There is a meeting of leaders and opinion shapers for representing all sorts of industries, all sorts of interests, civil society, all sorts of interests that happens prior to the meeting. In Kisii, for instance, there was a dome that was set up. We had about 3,000 people who actually now engaged. This is where, for instance, those views I was giving you about Migori were brought out, and then resolutions are agreed. Because what not necessarily resolutions as priority areas for the region. So that people come up and then we say, because it is impossible, and we accept it is impossible to have proper discourse in a rally where there is feedback from the people in the crowd. So there is a meeting that precedes the rally. In Kisii, it happened. In Western Kenya, we went to Nzoia Guest House, and this is where that feedback was coming from.
Again, another 3,000 people in Nzoia Guest House.
Yes, and I was there myself. And you could see, for instance, in the resolutions or the priority areas that were read out by the governor in Kakamega, the issue of a representative of teachers in the TSC commission was actually, it found its way into the resolutions.
What
of
is the representation in those meetings?
In the coast,
what's the composition of those?
A broad section of society. So you have representatives from the youth, women, people with disabilities.
How are they selected?
These are people who are known, Omwami. If I wanted to have a representation of people from the media, if I call Eric Latif to represent the Standard Group, I have called people from the Standard Group. So it is not something that is difficult to do. Opinion leaders and shapers in every community.
Is it by invitation, or is it an open
It
forum?
is by invitation. Yes. So these leaders
so it's
are
possible
invited
for you to choreograph this.
It's not possible to choreograph.
By looking at
Latif,
you want to invite people who host breakfast radio shows, and you look at and see, C.T. Muga, Eric Latif, Nduoko. I think Eric thinks more like the way I think, so I'm going to invite Eric and leave out Ndu and CT.
And let me tell you, if you want to see that there's objective criteria that goes into selecting those people who attend those meetings, you look at the output. Because really, we are not going there to take a census of who supports the BBI and who doesn't. Look at the beautiful, beautiful resolutions that came out of Mombasa, for instance. They have laid out an array of proposed solutions to the problems that bedevil them on the issues of absentee landlords, expired leases of land, the court cases on court orders on evictions that are existing, the issue of the port. They're saying all port operations must be brought back. They have brought about the idea of regional authorities to be able to manage regional issues. I mean, these are resolutions that you can tell have originated from the people of the coast who actually know where the shoe is pinching. So in the resolutions, you can see the objectivity in terms of the invitees.
Is this not the same work that the committee of experts essentially should be doing?
There is no
information
committee of
that's coming.
experts.
There's a task force.
There's a task force.
There is no task force. There's a steering committee.
All right.
These are not semantics.
Let's call it what. All right, fine. Let's call it. Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's call it
it's
a steering committee.
Let's
call it a steering
committee.
It is a steering committee. Is this not the same work? These resolutions that you say, for example, that came out of Mombasa.
Absolutely.
Is this not what the steering committee essentially then should be
Actually,
doing?
why don't we ask a question? What's the steering committee supposed to do?
I think to understand the role of the steering committee, you have to look at the Gazette notice under which they were, freshly constituted. Their job is to conduct such meetings, to do validation of the report as well. And this, for instance, the resolutions of the priority areas that have been identified by the regions are not coming to ODM. They are going to that steering committee.
So are you helping the committee?
We are helping the committee? In fact, we are working with the committee in Western Kenya, for instance. We handed the resolutions to Amos Wako, who was there in his capacity as a member of that steering committee.
So it is an accepted dalliance now happening now.
Absolutely, because this process is for everyone. And I'm telling you that processes of law review and constitutional review are political processes. The impetus and the push will not come from experts, because these are not people who can convene meetings the way that we can.
So
we are the political mobilizers.
So there's no jumping the gun.
No, there is no jumping the gun.
There is jumping the gun. Let's be honest with ourselves.
You're saying there's no jumping
Edwin.
the gun here, that we say, okay, if there's a steering committee who's supposed to be going around the country and doing certain things, then now we have these rallies that are happening regionally, and they're going to be happening for the next, 6 weeks or odd, right? Then what is the work of this committee?
To add on to that, just before we respond, we saw the steering committee meeting yesterday, and Amos Wako said, all right, so we are going to go around the country and hold smaller meetings with the people so we can hear what the people are telling us.
If I read that Gazette notice properly, and I challenge anyone to tell me where it was said that the work of validation of a report is exclusively the preserve of this steering committee. It is nowhere. And as Kenyans, there's nothing that precludes us. This is a political process that we own. There's nothing that precludes us from having conversations with Kenyans. When we left Bomas, just a minute. When we left Bomas, it was agreed that we must now take this report to the people and have a conversation. I have never seen
as parties. It was agreed as parties,
as stakeholders in the political process. I have seen our friends from the so-called Tanga group have said these meetings, even after we invited them, treated them very well to VIP treatment. They have decided that this process doesn't work for them. They are going to hold their own parallel meetings, and it is their constitutional right, because if they feel that they can better explain what this process is and what it is about to their people, then really we have no objection. What we would have preferred is that because the hue and cry was that we needed a united front, nobody is opposed to this particular process, let's work together. We opened that door because at the end of the day, we have always held that there is nobody who has the monopoly of wisdom and knowledge about what we need to do or the solutions we need to proffer to the country. Let us have a conversation as one. And you see, one of the most interesting things, Latif, is you people never put this Tanga group to the task. When they say, oh, we don't like opposing views, then you are like, okay, the report is here. What exactly is this opposing view? What is the opposing view? In fact, in the proposals that have been made, what is it that you don't like, and which is this alternative view that you would have liked to prefer? As ODM and speaking as the Secretary General, we have appreciated what this process is about. We said after the joint NEC and PG meeting in December that we understand that this is a consultative give and take. We can have 1,000 views to give, but we understand that all our 1,000 views cannot find their way into the report, because we need to allow for other people to also give their views. So, for instance, on this issue of a prime minister, and I can see there is an eagerness by media and everybody else to tie the issue of the prime minister with ODM. I don't understand why, because when I read, like now, the Standard has said ODM pushes for new power structure, and sometimes I wake up and see the newspaper and I wonder, which ODM are they talking about? Because I'm the Secretary General of ODM.
Those leaders are ODM leaders.
No. Let me tell you. You can put their names here. If I come here and proffer a position, you can say Sifuna has said that this is what he thinks. But for ODM to speak, it speaks after a meeting of its properly constituted organs. Then you say this is a party position. We gave a position in December, and we said, yes, as a party.
Let's go into a break and then we come out of it and we continue this conversation. We have Edwin Sifuna, the Party Secretary General of ODM. We're discussing the BBI, the ongoing sensitization rallies around the country. Is it a gimmick by political class to take over this process from the citizens of the Republic? That's what he's answering. So, of course, we'll also be opening up your conversation to you. Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter. Post your comments and questions to Edwin Sifuna. Good morning, 18 minutes after 7. Well, we continue with the conversation with Edwin Sifuna. Edwin, so you're telling us about, the party's position and the reason why you're having all these meetings now, as well as saying that you're helping the steering committee gather views from the people. Before, when the steering committee first went round the country, you told us that as a party, you called your leadership together in a room, you discussed this is what you'd like,
Yes.
and you presented that unified position as a party
Absolutely.
to the steering committee.
Yes.
And during that time, there was no political noise, so to speak, because let's be honest, there is political noise now. There was no political noise at that point. It was a very peaceful and so to speak, sober process of view gathering by the steering committee.
I don't know where you
around
were.
the country.
I don't know where you were.
Around the
Eric.
country. It did not have this kind of, amplified level of political noise. So yes, there was a lot of agitation on the ground, but like you're saying, it was very organized. Like you called your people, you sat and you agreed this is the position we want to present. Now they've come up with a report, and they have also been asked, go around the country and validate this report and see what people feel and what people want. Even before they had been gazetted with a new fresh mandate, you had already bolted and organized your first meeting.
But Eric, I don't understand. Well, bolted how? The ODM, these political parties, are not the steering committee. If they choose to have meetings, how are we saying that it somehow collides or it obfuscates what the committee is about?
And this is where honesty is called into place.
That's
right?
what we are saying.
I'm asking the question because
Yes.
I don't understand.
This is where honesty is
a
called into
political
place.
process is just a political process.
This is where honesty is called into place. If you let me now answer your question.
I actually haven't asked a question. I was making a statement.
You're asking where is the issue.
You're the one who's asking the
I'm
question.
asking the
Eric.
question to Edwin, and then you interjected by saying, "Oh, you don't see where the problem is," and I'm answering you now where the problem is as
Where's the
I
problem?
finish the
Where's the
question to Edwin. Here is the issue. Before this steering committee had been gazetted, you had already started organizing these meetings around the country and saying what you'd like to see in the BBI report, right? So by that time, there was no organ to which you were going to present your views. True?
The organ was there.
It hadn't been gazetted.
Gazettement is
Had not happened.
let me
Yes.
tell you,
Formalization
I
of
want,
the
I
process.
want
Yes,
to speak as a lawyer.
Formalization
The
of it
High
had
Court,
not happened.
the High Court has already determined what the import of a gazettement is. The appointment is not made in the Gazette.
It's
The
in
appointment
the
has already
announcement.
been made by the president.
In the
This is an
announcement.
administrative process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the political issue that
But the
that
issue
I'm
of the
raising
honesty, I want to hear the question on honesty. Where is your problem with the honesty?
is the politics behind it. You knew very well, and everybody understands very well, that when you start having these political conversations going around the country and the politicians being in the forefront, it sort of takes the steering committee to the back burner. It brings the political issues to the fore.
There is
And
nowhere.
this is what is happening.
There is nowhere in the Gazette that it says that the work of validation of a report is the exclusive preserve of this steering committee. Number two, they are a steering committee. They are not the ones to run the process. They are just steering the process. So if the political class, for instance, after we left Bomas, it was agreed, we will take this report and have conversations with Kenyans, nobody prescribed the format or the form of those conversations. And we as a political class are doing it the best way that we know. Are you saying that there is no value? That is the question you have to address, Eric. Is there value?
I want to understand this element of honesty that Eric is talking about.
Yes.
What do you mean, Eric?
The politics, the noise around it. When the president was saying, don't go tangatangaing, let's not focus on politics. Let's not have a lot of political noise around the country. Let's focus on the main issues. There's exactly what he meant. And we all know what he meant.
Let me talk about honesty. Let me talk about honesty. You see, what we need is honesty, even in the people in the media. Because when I come to these talk shows, we had a conversation with you even last night about even the way that you frame issues. Because it appears that the media only regurgitates the propaganda and the negativity that is directed at this particular process. I will give you the classical example. On this issue of a prime minister, everybody in the media seems to be pushing it to appear like it's an ODM agenda. And then they come and claim that the process is being hijacked by politicians and they are fronting only their issues. We have said that this is a consultative give and take. That we understand that politics is persuasion and it will remain persuasion. If we saw, for instance, when we presented our views, that an alternative system of government to what we have is what would work best for us, we presented those views. They were not adopted in the form in which we presented them.
Yep.
We accept that we are not the final say on the solutions to the problems facing the country. Then don't force it on us. The views that are coming from the people are coming from the people. But everyone is desperate to make it appear that ODM is pushing for a powerful prime minister's position.
Is ODM supporting this push?
Which push?
For
We are
Prime Minister.
supporting the conversation. We are
Okay.
saying, just a minute, let me speak. We are subservient to the people as a political party. What the people propose and what the people want is what ODM will stand for. We have given proposals. We gave the proposal, for instance, on reconstitution of the IEBC. We are very happy that it was accepted, that we disband the current IEBC and we go back to the IPPG format. We have been the champions of saying we need to increase resources allocated to the devolved units. We are happy that Kenyans share that
So
view.
you're okay in claiming credit for that?
No.
But
That's
you don't
what
want to claim credit for the Prime Minister's position.
I'm not claiming credit. I am saying, reading the report, we can see a lot of ourselves in the report,
What
and
you
we are
proposed
happy.
is there.
And on the issue of
You
the Prime
proposed-
Minister,
you
just a
proposed
minute,
the Prime
Eric,
Minister
you need to-
position.
you need to let me finish. We accept that this is a consultative give and take. We were proposing, for instance, 45% minimum to the counties. The report is saying anywhere between 35 and 50. We're saying, okay, it is within the
band.
Yes, the band that we were talking about.
Yes.
We proposed that we need to have a system of government, a purely parliamentary system of government, the way that it was proposed under the Bomas process. And you will remember, the Bomas process was a people-driven process. ODM was not even in existence then. Yeah?
Yes.
So don't say that this is an ODM thing. But we have seen that they have incorporated views from other people and somehow diluted the idea that we gave. We say it's fine. We as ODM are not averse to taking power in its current form. It's not as if you give us this imperial presidency,
You will
we
not.
will shake with fever and die. No. We will thrive
Is
even under
ODM
this particular
so a
system. But we are
then
saying,
a direct question,
we are saying
Edwin, a direct
that
question.
there are proposals to better our lot.
So-
they don't have to be accepted in the form in which you present them. We accept that they can be enriched, varied, and so on and so forth.
But Mr. Sifuna, what would be wrong if ODM was pushing its own agenda?
There is no problem. That's what we are saying. But you understand the accusation. The accusation that politicians are taking over this conversation is because of the political suggestions. It's because of political suggestions. So they go to the dais and say, they are only talking about positions for themselves. Sifuna wants to be deputy prime minister. But we are saying there are other things in that report that actually for us, we want to give prominence. For instance, we have read the chapter on shared prosperity. We were in Western Kenya. On the same day, just the day before, we saw a full-page advertisement in the newspaper by the National Highways Authority, for instance, saying they're going to build 500 kilometers of road in central Kenya, the so-called Mau Mau roads. And we said, fantastic. The report says no one region should be able to suffer just because development is being taken to another region. We would have loved to receive as well 500 kilometers of road in Western Kenya, and I believe the other regions would love that as well. So that the chapter on shared prosperity for us as a party, we actually believe that if the recommendations therein, where even when it comes to appointment of people into cabinet, the permanent secretaries, you can be able to see regional representation.
So as a party, you're championing that?
Absolutely.
As
That
a
is,
party,
that
are you
is
championing-
one chapter that I can say, even if it is thrust upon us,
Yes.
we will take
will
it.
take it.
But
You will
yes,
love it.
Sifuna-
But
And
these
you're
are the
champion-
conversations
and you're championing it.
you're trying to put it in our mouths, yet we have
As a
very loud
party-
mouths and we
as
can
a
speak for
party-
ourselves.
So as a party, are you championing or not? Are you championing the executive prime minister position? As a
That
party.
was our proposal, but we are saying we are listening to other people because we do not have the monopoly of wisdom.
Right.
We have said
In all
that
proposals, of course, you listen to other
in
people,
our
unless
view,
you're saying this is the
in
only
our
one.
view, no, just a minute. In our view, if we went back to the original Bomas draft and the structure that was proposed in Bomas, we would be happy because that was a result of a people-driven process. We understand that we will not get everything, but we are saying we have the powers of persuasion. We are still talking to people. We are still trying to bring people around to be able to see things from our standpoint.
These views that are
If we don't get there, it's fine with us because we understand at the end of the day, this is
It's a
not about
negotiation,
ODM.
yes.
Now, these suggestions or the views that are coming from people, I mean, obviously going around the country and you're hearing from people pre-rally consultative meetings that are taking place.
Yes.
What happens to this information and to whom does it go?
That information is being submitted to the steering committee because it is the responsibility.
ODM as a party?
No.
Who?
By the organizers of these consultative meetings. They are not organized by ODM. I have told you
Who
that
are the organizers?
Who are the organizers?
the organizers
of these
are the
meetings that
regional
take
governors. The regional governors themselves are organizing. It just so happens to be a beautiful coincidence that in all the places that the BBI has gone, ODM is the dominant party.
Right.
When we go into Ukambani, it will be somebody else. You will not start saying it's CCM that has organized the meetings in
So then
Ukambani
do you then bear the collective responsibility, Edwin, to then say from here, these views that have now been expressed, collected, are we making sure that they're reaching the right place to make sure that this is what the people have said?
Let me tell you.
Because if you take the responsibility of going around and clamoring like this, then also the responsibility to make sure that it goes on to its expected end.
Let me tell you,
quite as important.
I don't know what you mean by taking responsibility to ensure, because I have told you that even at the inception process, when the team was going around the country collecting views, we gave our views, and I have said here, not all of our views were incorporated. So even these ones, we are taking. What I can assure you is that they will be received by the Haji committee. If that's what you are asking, they will be received.
They will
as
to
whether they will end up in the final report or draft or whatever it is, that is the preserve of the Haji committee. That is not our job.
You know, Mr. Sifuna, one of the problems that we in the media have with regards to what politicians say is this. One, they say a great deal. And very often, if we were to go by precedents, a lot of what they say doesn't actually see the light of day in terms of action. Now, so when you explain what you're explaining as well as you're explaining it, I'm inclined towards believing you.
Yeah.
But then I have to ask the question.
Yes.
How much of it will actually see the light of day in terms of action?
You know, Muga, it's a good question. But you see, for me, I can only talk about the things that are within my powers, the things that are within my control. If I have told you, for instance, that we did issue or give certain proposals, not all of them found themselves in the report. You want me to sit here and assure you that the product of these consultative meetings, as they are, all of them will find their way. Some of those things are very tough to deal with. And in fact, it is good that my brother spoke about honesty. The level of dishonesty that we saw from the likes of Murkomen in Mombasa, for instance, is shameful, and nobody's calling them out for it. I didn't get an opportunity to speak, but for instance, if the people of the coast have identified the SGR as the reason why the economy of the region is dying, then instead of the people who are responsible, like now we have owned the BBI process, we are the fathers. If anything goes wrong, you ask me. The fathers of the SGR are people like Murkomen. Instead of them coming there to explain to the people what is this wisdom they had at that particular point. Because when we were saying that the feasibility study of this particular railway points to an unsustainable project, that it is not going to be able to give back to the economy as much as they are telling us. They said, oh, the opposition does not like development. Oh. And then he stands there and says, oh, it is time for us now to take action and stop talking. You are the purveyors of this SGR. You are the owners of this SGR. Come and tell the people that you are sorry, that you are wrong, that you are going to do all it takes to return the port back to their people, or alternatively, carry the people from Mombasa and take them where you took their port for them to work there. But you can't say, and then the dishonesty is that, oh, ODM is quiet. ODM has abandoned its people. Mombasa is an ODM zone. We don't hear Raila. We don't hear Sifuna. I'm like, boss, you have allowed a thief into the house past your watchdog. The dog saw you walking with the thief into the house. Then you want to accuse the dog for not barking.
Let's take a short break.
It saw you with the thief.
Let's take a short break and take a look at what's happening on the roads, the traffic. It's 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. Edwin Sifuna-ODM Secretary General is in the studio. He's waxing honesty. Let's call him out where he also becomes dishonest. It's 27 minutes now to 8. Good morning. You're with Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General of ODM Party. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif, CT Muga and Nduoko. The live stream is up, Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. You can post your comments and questions to Edwin Sifuna on those digital platforms. Edwin, so we're talking about what ODM is championing and what the people also are asking for. What is ODM's position on regional governments?
I think the conversation is ongoing, even within the party. I do not think that it has concretized so that we are able to say that this is a position. There are arguments for and against it. For instance, there are those who say we have seen challenges when counties are, trying to undertake projects that are cross-cutting across counties. You have seen them by just the force of nature being forced to come together to have these regional blocks to be able to address some of those challenges. And the proposal was that there needs to be a legal framework to be able to make it easy for them to collaborate. For instance, I saw there was a push to open a regional bank, for instance, in Western Kenya. And the MCAs in the respective counties were a bit stuck under which law, which vote are they going to vote to allocate monies that are essentially county monies to a project that is a regional project. So there are challenges, my brother. There are roads that are classified as being under the county governments, and yet they straddle more than one county. Yes. I mean, so how do you or projects? For instance, if you're going to have a dairy plant or something major like a banana processing plant, you probably just need one in one region to be able to harvest all the produce from that particular region so that it makes economic sense. So people are stuck. How do we proceed? And the proposal was to have a legal framework within which these counties could collaborate. This is a cry that I am sure everyone has heard.
So it's for the economic
absolutely.
benefits.
The problem arises when people start saying, politicians want to create positions for themselves. And instead of looking at the problem and saying, Eric, it is actually possible.
Edwin, are they
This
not
is not true?
Are they not trying
No,
to
no.
create positions
Let me tell you. You see, people are refusing to think. Because one of the proposals, you can look at a problem and proffer a solution that actually does not result in an additional position being created. It is possible. For instance, we proposed that instead of having a regional assembly, why can't this, because you see these matters that are cross-cutting, they don't arise on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
So why can't the elected MCAs in the regions from time to time sit and constitute themselves as a regional assembly without any additional pay, without any additional emoluments, for them to be able to pass resolutions regarding these projects that are cross-cutting? It is possible without saying, let us have now a fresh regional assembly or a fresh regional governor. Is it not possible even to have the governors elected in the areas? Once you are elected, you sit down and you say, we're going to elect a chair.
Is there another way of? Is there another way of
There is another way.
that
That's what I'm saying. Instead of us having the conversation, you demonize the whole idea by saying people want to create positions
Because
for
that's what is coming out.
No. Because that's what you want to see. You see,
It's
even
not what we want
you,
to see. It's what we see.
You like to sell controversy, Latif.
There is nothing
that the media will ever clothe in positivity. And the classic example, and the media has never apologized for this. After our PG and NEC, the Prime Minister's speech was made public. My statement as the resolutions of the NEC was published statement publicly. But the following day I wake up and the nation is saying, ODM pushes for powerful prime minister. The Standard is saying ODM abandons its quest for powerful prime minister. You are misinforming the public because that is what you thrive in. You should be able to tell the truth when you talk about honesty, Eric. But on this one, at least the Standard was the one that was accurate. This other newspaper decided to go. They decide on a story.
Okay.
They decide on a story. Then they ask
Back
you,
to the question.
Sifuna,
The question
there's a
is
story I'm doing. What story are you doing? Just tell the story.
Back to the question. The question is regional governments, right? So we're talking about what we have currently. County governments have come together and formed regional blocks.
Yes.
Economic blocks.
Yes.
And you're saying that in implementing some of the ideas that they're discussing for those economic blocks, they are meeting some challenges.
Yes.
And one of those challenges, one of the solutions that's emanating from that is having some regional form.
A legal framework.
Some legal framework.
To enable them to collaborate.
Now, is that legal framework a regional government, like the way we are saying?
It is one of the options. That's what we are saying.
And what is coming out now, for example, in those two, for example, in Mombasa, I saw Governor Kingi saying that we're proposing to have 2 regional governments in the coast region, upper coast and lower coast, right? And that will have a regional governor. Why do you need to have a regional political office, regional governor, if you have a regional governor, then what does that mean? That means a regional executive. It means a regional assembly.
This is a conversation. The governor is profiling solutions as he sees them. other people see things differently. Don't go and say that because Kingi has said he wants a regional governor, ODM wants a regional governor.
That is the resolution
What
he
we
was
want,
reading. Was he reading his
those
own
are
opinion?
the coast people.
All right.
It's not ODM. You should remember that
and
the
it goes-
resolution of a coast ODM, it was the coast region was as a result of a meeting of the people of the coast. Not all of them. Okay, 90% of the coast is ODM, but not all of them are ODM.
Are ODM.
Yeah, and by the way, like
Kakamega
if you go
resolution
back,
had the same thing.
if you go back to the Bomas draft, and I told you the Bomas draft was produced before ODM was in existence.
Yes.
It had proposed 14 regional governments. That is a proposal from the people themselves.
Yes.
There is a problem they were trying to address. So you can demonize it.
Did it have a lower tier to that?
What do you mean
The
by lower
Bomas
tier?
draft. Did it have
There was a regional tier. And there were counties, yes.
right.
Absolutely.
And what was the arrangement in that? What was the structure?
What do you mean by the structure? They were above the counties, the regional governments.
With county assemblies and county
With assemblies
governors.
and they were called who? They were not called governors, regional premiers.
Regional
That was
premier.
the name that was used in the
Okay.
Bomas draft.
So the conversation is coming back again now at this particular point of the same formation of regional governments. Is it mirroring what was in the Bomas draft, or is it addressing
That's why I'm saying,
present challenges?
as it is right now, I have not seen a concretized position on what the form of the regional governments is going to take. People are spitballing. People are throwing out their ideas. You heard what Governor Kingi has said. We have had other people say the same. One of the things that we are very clear on, Eric, is that we are not going to amend the constitution with anybody in mind. We are not going to amend it with the second-term governors in mind, so that we accommodate, or with Raila Odinga in mind.
Is that so?
That's what we are saying.
And we should believe you.
Absolutely. We should. Why would you not believe me?
Because
I have
we're
come here
politicians.
with nothing but truth.
Actually,
Because we don't believe politicians.
As the Secretary General of ODM, our inclination to believe you may be higher than if you had come here as an MP. Because, unfortunately, the truth quotient that our MPs tend to represent tends to be at a minimum.
But it's not fair to generalize. Even for you in the media, we have accusations against media, but we pick out. Even for me as a SG, I have made it the habit. I will not blanket condemn the media. If a journalist has given a fake story, you say, so and so, Eric Laftif, this story today, you have pulled it out of the air, it doesn't exist.
It is true.
So even for you, I have met honest politicians. Maybe you should walk around with me. I'll show you one or two. They exist.
I also
They
know.
actually exist.
I also know. Often,
So-
what we're discussing here is a
Yeah.
representation.
Yeah.
If I come from a family of night runners, no one is going to ask if I'm a night runner.
Yes.
You're going to assume that all
They're
of
going
you
to
are.
assume I am a
Exactly.
night runner. Yes.
I want to,
Wouldn't you agree, Eric? Wouldn't you agree, Edwin?
I don't know. I don't know. I am not in the habit of
generalizing.
blanket, generalization and blanket condemnation. But one of the things that I will also admit is that sometimes when these conversations are put in the table, there are elements of self-interest. People are looking to see how
it works for
this
them.
is going to work for me. What will I get out of it? And sometimes, because you want to carry everybody on board, you can entertain some of that self-interest as far as you can. But at some point, you will tell them, honestly speaking, because the decision ultimately is the decision of the people of Kenya.
now, if you go back to that decision
yes.
being the decision of the people of Kenya,
Yes.
I see there's so many different storms, so many balls that are being thrown up in the air at the same time. We have then factions with whichever party, this person, these individuals saying one thing or another. What does it then do to the psyche of the people for whom this process is supposed to be for in the first place? One group is saying one thing, another group is saying another thing. Within that group, there are divisions. At the end of the day, if we are saying that you're subservient to the people of Kenya, are you not concerned then about how they are accepting or even perceiving all of this?
I don't think the people of Kenya expect a mass choir from our politics, that we are in sync. People understand that we as political animals have different perspectives
you're
on
competitive.
issues. Yeah, and we are competitive, and somebody would like to find an edge on the other.
I'll
give you an example of I'll give you an example of what happened after the killing of Suleimani in the US. Even the Democrats were struggling to find an in, because everybody agrees that this was a terrible character, at least from the perspective of the US. But then they want a differentiation. Yeah. So let us have all these conversations. Politics, as I said, will remain persuasion. The person who has the best persuasive abilities, and Kenyans can discern what works for them and what doesn't work for them. At the end of the day, if you remember the meeting in Bomas, the greatest cheers from the public were when the chapter on who we are as a people was being discussed, when we could see the reflection of ourselves, that we are predisposed to offer bribes
and that tells
bribes.
You that's what
I'm saying.
That's what we want.
Exactly.
When you go out there and start telling us about to be prime minister,
so this is the problem. You see, you are falling
you
into
guys lose it.
You are falling into the trap, Eric, that I said you people like to throw yourselves into. Because when we discuss these issues, you don't want to pay any attention. You want to push me back into discussing regional premiers and prime ministers. But I am telling you, and I said here, as ODM, our focus, and we believe that if one chapter only is implemented in this BBI report, is a chapter on shared prosperity, is a chapter on nationhood and who we are as a people. If that alone is addressed,
so as
I
the
believe
drivers,
we'll have made
as the drivers and you call
step.
yourself the fathers of this process.
Yes.
Why don't you ensure that most of the political leaders who come out to speak, for example, at the rallies, are championing that side
That's
of
what
the
happened.
conversation?
That's what happened in Mombasa. I told you, the people of the coast actually gave good solutions to the perennial land problems. They gave solutions. They gave suggestions on
The
how they want.
speakers at the rally.
Absolutely.
Or are you talking
They
about
spoke about
the meeting
They
prior?
spoke about those issues. The people who decide what to give prominence are you people in the media. Because in Governor Kingi's entire address, you have chosen to give prominence to his suggestion on regional premiers. Why not talk about the solutions to the land problem? And I was surprised. In fact, in addition to the issue of honesty, the people who are the causes of the problem of land in Mombasa, the coast, were there. One of them is here in the newspaper today. He has diverted a river, an entire river, from all the people to his farm. He was there.
13 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation. On the hot seat this morning is Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General of ODM party. We're discussing BBI, and he's saying that they are the fathers of BBI, and therefore what they are doing around the country is protecting this process. You believe him or not? Well, we wait to hear what you say. Good morning. It's 12 to 8. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation as well is happening on our digital platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. Now, let's talk about the end process, how we see this BBI coming to life. So we've seen that the party leader of ODM has said he'd like to see a referendum. We've seen some leading lights in ODM, including Senator James Orengo, saying, let's have a referendum actually by mid this year. First of all, is a referendum feasible by mid this year?
I don't think that if Kenyans set their mind on anything, they will not be able to achieve it. There is a very solid reasoning behind the proposals that we get done with these resolutions or the referendum in the first half of this year. Eric, you know that once we get into the 2022 election cycle, it will be very, very difficult.
Once we get into it?
Yeah. In 2021.
Aren't we there already?
No. Okay, for us, we haven't gotten there. There are some who started campaigning after the results were announced in October of 2017. But for us, we haven't started. And in fact, part of the noise you hear, Latif, is that somebody has had the dance floor exclusively to himself. He doesn't like that other people are joining to appear to do a jig also. So when he sees that there's rally somewhere and there's 30 governors, that is his preserve. That's what he has been doing. So he doesn't like it, and that's why you hear all this hullabaloo. But back to the referendum question. If once we get into the 2022 election cycle, preparations need to begin ahead of time. If you talk to the IEBC, they will tell you that once you cross over into 2021, you're essentially into the election cycle for 2022. Preparations need to be made. There are proposals, for instance, that are going to touch on even how the election itself is conducted. We as political party leaders have been challenged, for instance, that next time the issue of meeting the gender threshold in the House is now the responsibility of political parties. Both the BBI report and a High Court judgment have said as much. As political parties, we need to prepare. If there are going to be any changes in the realm of the political parties' law or election laws, it needs to happen in good time. This is why the proposal is being made, that if it were possible, if it were preferable to Kenyans, we have this referendum.
So the question was, is it feasible? So first of all, if we are to have a referendum, would you want it to be conducted by the current IEBC, or do you want to be conducted by a new IEBC?
First of all, it is not something that, if we wanted a referendum right now, it is not something that we have a choice. The law directs that the people who are in office are the ones to conduct the referendum and the elections. This is the same way we had to suffer them in Kibra, although you saw the struggles that we had with them. Something as simple as the law prescribing that when you go into a by-election, you provide a register of all the voters to all the parties involved. It takes ODM to go to court to get an order on the very last night, just the night before the election, for these guys to give us a register of voters. So you understand that our problems with the IEBC are not things that we imagine. Kenyans can see that these are people who, even when the law prescribes something, they don't want to follow it.
So they're not personality problems, they're institutional problems.
No. These are personality problems.
So in this case, it's personality issues.
Absolutely, because you see, Latif, it's not institutions who choose to disobey court orders. It is individuals. It's individuals in the institution. When the Supreme Court said, open the server, it is James Muhati, the director of ICT, and his bosses who refused to do it. It is not the institution of the IEBC, it's not the building that is also in. So the problem is the people.
You have a problem with the individuals themselves.
Yes, if the law says provide a register, the IEBC is not the building. It is the people. Somebody has to actually prepare and give you the register.
So the people that we have in IEBC now, actually,
absolutely.
Now that we've gone into IEBC,
and this is why the people of Kenya in the BBI report have said the current IEBC needs to be disbanded.
And we have a fresh
one. It is there, and we want a fresh one, and we go back to the IPPG model. Now, back to the IPPG
where political
model,
parties are choosing the referee.
Going back to the IPPG model requires a change in the constitution, because the constitution already prescribes how you arrive at commissioners in the commission. So you have to change that and say it is going to go back to political parties. That referendum will also be about IEBC. In fact, they will be presiding over their own death, because from that one they will not survive.
With what we see now, do we see a referendum happening in the middle of this year?
I don't think there is any challenge that is insurmountable other than addressing maybe the issue of financing of a referendum. That is probably the only hurdle that I see.
A big one,
but it is a big hurdle.
A big one, because right now, from where we see, and it's been said many times, there's no money, right? So in order to get this done, obviously something that is fund intensive, whichever way we choose to look at it. So again, I come back to that question: are we going to be able to get it done? Because they're very pertinent issues that need to be looked at, considered, in order for a referendum to take place.
And is it a must that we go through?
And is it necessary?
I think. Let us first of all distinguish between whether something is necessary and whether it is something that is unavoidable. The constitution itself, as it is right now, says if you touch on certain sections of the constitution or articles of the constitution, you mandatorily you must have a referendum. So even the report in its current form, if it has proposed changes to the role of government, of parliament, which it has done.
A referendum.
Yes, it requires a referendum. It has proposed that we do away with Nairobi as a county in the manner in which it is currently constituted. And the constitution says if you touch the structure of the devolved units, you require a referendum. So even in its current form, a referendum is mandatory. But what we're saying is we have to have a discussion about those challenges. one of the things that I know, the propaganda that is directed at this thing is that it requires a lot of money. Nobody, people pick figures from there and they say 30 billion, 200 billion. One of the conversations actually we need to have as a country is that we have the most expensive elections. If you go per capita, per vote, we have the most expensive elections. And what are the reasons why it is the most expensive elections? It is vendor interests. It is corruption. It is people trying to be clever with money here and there. And you have seen, even the BBI has tried to address this problem by saying now we are going to have an executive chairman.
Which takes me to the question I want to ask you.
Yes.
Specifically to ODM. The underlying and the common theme in our entire discussion is something called impunity.
Yes.
We've actually stated in this show that there's a silent ministry of impunity in the country that pervades almost every aspect of our lives. How does ODM plan to address impunity should they come into power?
Wow, you want me to lay out our 2022 manifesto now, but
impunity.
The truth
I'm
of the
very
matter is
specific
this.
on
Let
impunity.
me just tell this. I tell people some of these things and they laugh. An ODM government is the least likely to disobey a court order just because of who we are. What we are about. If you have leading legal scholars and practitioners like James Orengo and myself as his understudy in government, we are least likely to disobey a court order. In fact, this impunity stems from that fact that there are people who are
That they are not
shielded.
legal scholars.
Shielded. No, they are shielded from political, from legal consequence by virtue of their office. So, for instance, in this thing of Miguna, how is it very difficult to identify the person who issued the red alert in a government? How is it possible? That red alert, who signed it? Who issues it ordinarily? Yeah, let that person come before the judge and explain why they cannot follow a court edict. It doesn't make sense even to us. If an order has been issued by a court, every one of us is enjoined to respect the order. You don't start arguing with the order. So ODM, I can tell you, we have been in this position before. In fact, these days we are happy that experience is reaching our counterparts in Jubilee. That the things we used to tell them, that Article 37 protects you when you are peaceably assembled to be able to march. Now they are coming to see the light. I was very happy. I'm hearing some of them are experiencing the Damascus moment, and people are saying, ODM is laughing at them. We are not laughing at them. We are actually extremely happy that they have come around to now see that we need a country that obeys the law, that protects all of us, even the weakest, not that only works for you when you are in power. So now we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation with Ndindi Nyoro about Article 37 and Moses Kuria when he was saying fire bullets into these people. Now we have seen that
we are coming to the end of the show. So.
But Mr. Sifuna, you are aware that you haven't answered my question, of course.
I have answered your question, and I'm telling you the truth. Impunity, first of all, stems from a lack of accountability before the law. It is that simple. Even some of the attacks that we are seeing against the judiciary, I've seen somebody putting up a banner on Mombasa Road today in the dead of the night. The judiciary, a judge will never improve the quality of your case. You put trash in, you get trash out. It doesn't matter how much you howl and shout at the judge. They are not going to convict somebody if the police have done a poor job, if the prosecution has done a poor job in presenting the evidence before the judge. Going after the budget of the judiciary, I was surprised yesterday. Moses Kuria, who is somebody who's in the budgeting committee, now they are coming up with minimums, percentages for financing the judiciary, for instance. The constitution as it is right now has not prescribed any minimum or maximum to the judiciary or to any of the arms of government. It is the budget committee in which he sits and parliament in general that decided that one time, because
Edwin,
they had beef with
30 seconds to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So let me just cut you short. Get to the top of the hour. I'll give you 5 minutes at up to 8 or 5, so
Okay.
I can finish this particular point.
Yeah.
Edwin Sifuna is in the studio. He's the Secretary General of ODM, and you've been posting your comments and questions, of course, on Facebook. He's looking at them. He'll be responding to that as well. It's coming up to 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.